Let's talk to Peter Bleksley, former Scotland Yard detective, because at the moment, one of the things that we are all asking the question about is how are some of these new lockdown restrictions going to be policed? We've heard stories of police saying they're not going to, this is what they said over Christmas, they weren't going to stop people from going in any particular direction. They didn't have the manpower to do that. I'm hearing stories anecdotally of that now beginning to happen. Let's talk to Peter and find out how tough it is for the police right now. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Mike.
And a very happy new year to you as well. Thanks for joining us. I think many people have watched the police actions over the course of the last year with a mixture of sort of sympathy and kind of distraction, really, because, of course, it can't be easy for the police to carry out some of these rather woolly instructions that they're getting from their masters.
No, in many regards, you've absolutely nailed it, because so much of this legislation has been hurriedly enacted. The directives that the frontline cops get from their masters have often been equally as hurried, and some might argue cobbled together on the back of a fag packet.
Right.
But regardless, the frontline, I think, overwhelmingly have done a really remarkable job. Nobody joined the police service thinking, oh, yes, I'm going to police a pandemic.
Yeah.
Nobody joined thinking they were going to do that. So there has had to be so much on the job, hurried learning from everybody. And what a thankless task our police have been asked to do.
Yeah.
You know, they really want to be playing cops and robbers, good guys and bad guys, protecting the vulnerable and their communities. This is not what anybody signed up to do.
I mean, one of the conversations I was listening to yesterday on talkRADIO was about, you know, how far are you allowed to travel to do your exercise, for example, right? Now, if I was living, say, for example, I don't know, 10 miles away from a beach and I had a dog, and I wanted to take the dog for a walk on the beach, I have no idea whether I'm supposed to or allowed to take the dog to the beach in a 10-mile journey and then take him back again. And I have no idea, if the police stop me, whether they're within their rights to tell me I can't do it.
You and me both. And I suspect there are some police officers there who are equally as unaware as to exactly what the rules are, because they're being made up so hurriedly, and they are shifting and changing from week to week, almost on a daily basis. So, of course, there is confusion abounding across the length and breadth of the land. But right from the early days, the police said they were going to engage, they were going to encourage, they were going to explain, and then only as a last resort would they enforce the law and issue those fines. My understanding is there's been about 25,000 or so of those fines issued. And I suspect what we might find now is that enforcement might not be the last resort. I have seen some anecdotal evidence, the testimony of officers on social media this morning, who were saying, quite frankly, they're so fed up with people flouting the laws that they're going to go straight to enforcing.
Yes.
Because everybody knows you've got to be socially distanced, and under the current lockdown, you've got to stay at home, save for some exceptional circumstances. And if people are going to breach that, I hear individual officers are going to take it upon themselves to be rather more firm-handed with all of this.
Yes, but that's when it starts to get tricky, I think. I mean, I've got a message here that I got overnight from a listener called Matt, who said that a friend of his who lives in Redditch in Worcestershire, which I believe is West Mercia Police, was stopped while he was out driving his car by two police officers who said, where are you going? What are you doing? He basically was told that, you know, he didn't have no business going out shopping. And they said, was it essential shopping? And they basically escorted him home. Now, you might say that they did the right thing. I have no idea if they did the right thing. But that kind of situation could escalate into something pretty nasty quite quickly, couldn't it?
Yeah, but then the question's got to be, what was that driver doing in his car?
I mean, we're not living in communist China, Peter. I mean, you know, maybe he just wanted to go out for a drive. I mean, if he's in his car on his own driving, he's not harming anyone, is he?
No, we're not living in communist China. But how many cases of COVID are there in Wuhan at the moment?
Well, you tell me. I mean, I wouldn't believe a word that comes out of Wuhan, to be honest. So I wouldn't be able to answer that one way or the other.
Yeah, perhaps we do have to be cautious of that. But it would appear that in China and other countries where there have been, yes, draconian 1970s Stasi East Germany style measures put in place, and people have complied, then the reduction in cases has been dramatic, and it has been much easier to be able to control the pandemic.
Well, if you don't
Plus,
do what you're told in China, Peter, you might get shot. I think that probably has something to do with it.
yeah, but yes, of course it does. But there are other less draconian regimes where they've been very successful in keeping a lid on this. Of course, with rights come responsibilities. And yeah, I am a fluffy liberal in so many regards. I think I could be accused of
Are
that.
you?
And I treasure the rights that we have. I'm an investigative writer. I'm forever holding the establishment to task.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course, I treasure and value our freedoms, but with our rights come responsibilities. And there is an absolute responsibility on people to actually conform to what these regulations are. If 75,000 deaths are not a clear enough message for anybody to hear, to understand, and therefore to act accordingly and comply, then quite frankly, they are an idiot of monumental proportions.
Well, you say that, Peter, but there is an awful lot of wiggle room in that statement you just made, because what I think we are required to do is to be responsible. And I think each and every one of us who has a brain and who is responsible and who has children and who has elderly relatives knows precisely what the limitations are of what you can and cannot do. But what we don't want is for overzealous police officers to start stopping cars where they're driving with not doing any harm to anybody, to go either for a walk or to just go for a drive. I don't want to see people being pulled over by the police. I'd rather see the police making sure that crime isn't happening.
If there was conformity with the regulations, then there would be no need for draconian policing of any description, because people would be at home other than if they fitted one of the exemptions, for example, for work when only utterly necessary and essential shopping. But you know as well as I do, thousands of people have flaunted these regulations.
I don't know that. No, I don't, Peter. I
Well, I
don't
do,
accept
because
that.
I've seen clear, unequivocal evidence of mass gatherings in London and other cities of foolish.
Well, there was a mass gathering when Black
hospitals.
Lives Matter protested, and the police all got down on one knee and let them do it.
Well, of course, I believe the police should remain impartial at all times. And if I had been a leader of police, I would have said maintaining our impartiality is more important than showing solidarity.
Would you have had all those people arrested who were marching then?
Well, while we're on that thread, it's not so long ago that a senior police officer from Kent, for example, stood holding a traveller flag. So by natural extension, what flag do they hold next? A Palestinian flag, for example.
Yeah.
The police need to remain impartial at all times, and that is very important.
But they also need to be consistent. And if they're going to start arresting people for driving around in a car, they should be arresting people for having an illegal gathering, i.e. a march of more than 6 people.
And you have 43 different police forces in England and Wales, with 43 different chief constables or a commissioner in the Met, whose each individual interpretation of the directives handed down from the College of Policing might vary, might be different. Their instructions to their officers will be different. Police staffing numbers will vary from force to force. What might work in a rural environment where there are very few people living, for example, may not be applicable in an inner city urban environment. Policing has to be flexible. I agree. Consistency is great when it can be, but it's what one rule for Billericay is not necessarily the rule for Brighton.
No, I get that. And I think also, a lighter touch is required, Peter. I think what we don't want to see is individual police officers taking sort of the law into their own hands and stopping people from going about their ordinary business in a responsible manner, whereby they somehow find themselves in breach of the law, which they're not actually. And I think that's the important thing, that what we don't want to see is overzealous policing. By all means, arrest people who are breaking the law and obviously doing something they shouldn't be doing. But by stopping people driving around in cars, I just don't think that's the way forward.
Ordinary business is not permitted at the moment. We are in extraordinary circumstances.
Well, that's not actually true, is it? Because I'm driving into work every single day. If I get stopped by the police on the Jamaica Road, I'm not going to be very happy about that.
There is an exemption for people making audio programs or television programs. That's a clearly defined exemption within the regulations. And if you can prove that you're on your way to make an audio,
I don't see why I should. That's my point. You know, they should take the view that people who are out and about, unless they are clearly breaking some law by which they are mixing with more than the number of people they're supposed to be mixing with. This is what I'm saying. It's a very tricky area.
It is, and I think our police have done an overwhelmingly brilliant job walking a tightrope with hurriedly handed down directives, very quickly enacted legislations, and a time that has never been seen before in this nation. I think overwhelmingly those heroic men and women on the front line are doing a remarkable job.
They certainly are.
They get it right all the time? No, of course they won't. But by and large, and I am one who calls the police into account on the media, as you will well know,
Yes.
Mike, on many, many occasions. I think overwhelmingly here, they've done a thankless, extremely difficult task very well.
Exactly right. And that's exactly how we started this conversation. And that's exactly how we should end it. Peter, thank you very much indeed. Peter Bleksley there, former Scotland Yard detective. I think it is very, very tricky. If you're an individual police officer, I don't think you know precisely what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. And I'd love to hear from you if that is the case. 0344 499 1000. And as I said to you, I've got plenty of evidence from people who are sending me messages about what they are seeing and what they are hearing out there. I'd love to hear your views.